is Alex Boudreau. I'm Director of AI at Clario, and today I'll be talking about efficient clinical document analysis with GenAI on AWS. And to give you a bit of background, I lead the GenAI department and ECOA AI department at Clario. And we're a team specialized in building generative and multimodal AI solutions that are really focused on developing purpose-built and specialized technologies to help with innovations, quality, and speed within Clario and also in clinical trials. And if you've not heard about Clario, we're a leading healthcare technology and research company that has helped contribute to over 26,000 clinical trials and allowed for 700 regulatory approvals. So, of course, we're very much involved in clinical trials. And if you're familiar with this space or not, you can imagine that there's a large volume of data that's being generated in those studies, both structured and unstructured. Now, if you look at one type of very important unstructured document or data is the study protocol. And this is a key document in studies that is a comprehensive clinical document that outlines the objectives, the design, the methodology of the clinical trials. Right, so very critical in every study that are conducted. When I joined Clario and started up the GenAI department, study protocols are in fact one of the first areas we looked at. And the first solution we built is a custom GenAI platform that helps with the automatic extraction of key information and insights from those documents. And the reason we tackle that first is because of the challenges with those documents, right? So the problem, if you think of the problem space, these documents are complex, dense, and very lengthy, and it requires expert knowledge to effectively review that information. So overall, it's very time consuming. And if you operate in our space, those protocols actually inform the services and applications that should be rolled out in a trial. So of course, they're very important to us and to our customers. Now, if you look at some of the challenges with those documents, it's, in addition to being very lengthy, is that they are very variable. Right, so study protocol documents are not standardized per se, and they vary between organizations. Their content and their structure varies between studies and therapeutic areas. And a protocol for AstraZeneca is not necessarily the same. Well, in fact, will not be the same as for Pfizer, for example. They're also very long form in content. So you're looking at hundreds of pages of information that is very specialized with terminology, acronyms, and topics that are domain specific. But they're also rich in multimodal, meaning that you have long text, you have bullet points, you've got nested sections, you have diagrams, you have footnotes, you have images, and you have in general complex tables as well that holds very important information. To give you a bit of a sense of that complexity, here you have some screenshots from public protocols that were posted to clinicaltrials.gov. On the left, you have a table, which is a schedule of event. You've got the different visit types and the endpoint being conducted and the schedule of those endpoints and visits. As you can see, there's a lot of information, very busy. So understanding that information is critical, but also very challenging for AI. And on the right, you have a diagram that holds some very important information for the study. So your solution needs to be able to extract that information reliably if you want to be able to extract key insights from those documents. Now, if you're familiar with large language models in GenAI for document analysis or document summarization, you might say, well, we can use a simple prompt, a single prompt, and extract all the information that you want from those documents. But if you're looking at specialized analysis, domain-specific information, I would say that's actually a misconception, right? You can't just go and use a single prompt to extract all information that you need. In fact, what you might need to do, and generally that is the case, is to build a solution that includes some custom parsing, retrieval, prompting, and generation techniques for your needs, for your use case, right? And generally, what you'll need to do is actually leverage multiple LLMs and use multiple LLM queries to extract that information. To give you some very simple examples, here we have a structured output from a study protocol where highlighted at the top is the therapeutic area, which says neuroscience. So assuming you have a standardized way of naming therapeutic areas or classifying therapeutic areas in studies, here what we've used is a simple few-shot classification technique to associate different types of information to a therapeutic area. Now, in some cases, there's some more complex analysis required. So for instance, at Clario, we have different business units, and depending on the content of the study, we may be involved or could be involved in that study. And what we do is, as a system, the information that is looked at is the endpoint and the different assessments in the scheduled event to determine if, yes, the business could be involved in that study. So for that, we actually leverage complex reasoning prompt and structured output to actually do that analysis. Now, one of the big questions is, great, that's for 2 data points. How do you do this at scale, right? On a large number of data points across documents. So through our experimentation over the years, and these are common terms, right? What we found is that by focusing on 4 core pillars, and we call them the 4 core pillars of effective document analysis with GenAI, if you focus on really these different aspects of document analysis and follow a experimental process, you'll be able to actually extract some really high quality, high reliability results and information from those documents. So first you have to focus on the parsing, right? So depending on the type of information that you're looking for, maybe you can use some simple text parsing using a Python library. If you're looking at, for example, in study protocols, images and diagrams, you might want to look at OCR or multimodal LLMs, right, that have vision capabilities. But in that doing, you need to consider the latency, the compute costs, and accuracies, of course, and maybe the structure of the content that you're extracting. So you have to look at that carefully based on your use case and choose the right strategy for that. Same thing goes with retrieval, right? There's different strategies for retrieving information from vector databases. You can use TopK, you can use keyword-based approaches or hybrid semantic and keyword, for example, right? So again, a few considerations to look at is your choice of vector database, the similarity function that is supported by that vector database, what is the scale, capacity, right? Looking at latency and cost, and which embedding model does it support if it is restricted. So these are all aspects that you need to consider as well. Same thing goes for prompting, right? It's not a single prompt that can do everything. What you want to do is, again, take a experimental approach and look at different strategies around prompting. There could be simple zero shot, which is you just provide instructions. There could be few shot, where you provide multiple examples. You can define some classification prompts, reasoning prompts, and so on, where you have some very detailed and complex reasoning steps. Again, you have to look at the different aspects of that, for example, on the transferability of your approach to unseen data. So maybe your prompt works well on 3 documents, but does it work well on new documents that you've not tested with? So that's the question of overfitting on your quote-unquote training set, right? And you have to look at different strategies applied to specific LLMs as well. And then the final step in the 4 pillars is the generation, where you use the large language models to generate the output that you're looking for. And there's different approaches to that as well. Maybe a smaller context that you're passing as input to the LLM will work better for your task, or maybe you need to look at larger context. Maybe you need to look at windowed context. Do you need to also support structured output? And do you even need to consider fine-tuning? Generally, with the latest generations of LLMs, fine-tuning is not necessarily required, but sometimes it may be, right? So a few considerations there is to look at the small versus large aspect of the model, the latency, the cost. Do you want to go with a hosted service through an API, for example, or do you want to manage your own open source LLM? So a lot of aspects to consider. But if you focus on these and do a step-by-step analysis, you're able to get some really good results. And what we found, in fact, is that you can achieve some really high reliability, high accuracy results, and what we call intelligence through optimization, right? By optimizing each of these pillars for your use case, you can actually achieve really, really high quality results. And the problem becomes essentially a fine tuning problem, similar to traditional ML, where you're fine tuning your model, right? Your weights and your parameters. Here, what you're looking at is the different pillars. So, what parsing are you using? What retrieval mechanism? What prompts are you using? And what LLMs are you using? So, if you optimize on all of these elements for your use case, you're able to achieve intelligence through optimization. Now that's great. And we've seen that it works actually very well. We've demonstrated that it works very well in our system and our approach. But then you might have a question. How do you scale that from a single data point to multiple data points across documents? So an approach that we've taken that works extremely well is to essentially scale this through orchestration, right? So AI orchestration or an orchestration agent, depending on how you want to call it. And what we've done is built a custom high performance framework that essentially considers that whole problem set, that whole workflow as a graph. So you can have in your graph agent, each node having all of the required parameters. And we store that as a configuration file where you can fine tune your retrieval choice, your search and retrieval strategy, right? Your prompt, which LLM you're using. Is there any re-ranking in your search that's needed? Is it a hybrid method of keyword and semantic, for example? And you essentially configure that for each of the data points that you're extracting from your document. And what's really great about this approach is that we actually can parallelize the processing, meaning that we don't have to wait for one data point after the other to extract all the required information. We can run that in parallel at scale to provide results extremely fast. Now, you might ask yourself, or might be interested in asking me, how good is this approach? And we've done some significant validation, right? A lot of accuracy metrics that we've compiled, and we did a lot of testing on this method because of the nature of our field, very important. And what we found is that we're achieving over 98% accuracy on the large set of data points that we extract and infer from study protocol documents. But interestingly as well, we ran a benchmark, compared our approach to more standard RAG implementation, right? And what we found is that our system actually performs at least 7 times faster than traditional RAG. So it's certainly a performance and high accuracy system that we've put in place. To give you a bit of an overview on the solution architecture, and we actually have a blog post about this overall system and approach on the AWS architecture blog. We've broken down here the different components. This is a sample solution, right? It doesn't go into the overall details, but some of the key aspects that you want to know here is that, first of all, you've got the documents. We upload them securely in S3. And then once you've got those documents uploaded, the next steps goes through the orchestration layer that I've just talked about for the parsing and other steps that come after. Right, so for parsing, you can use technologies like Amazon Textract, or you can use Python libraries, multimodal LLMs, and so on to extract the text and the information in your documents as you need. And then depending on your chunking strategy, which is how much information do you regroup together and then vectorize, you can go ahead and take that text, use the embedding model that is available to you, and vectorize that information. When it's vectorized, you store that in Amazon OpenSearch for fast retrieval thereafter. Right. So once we've got that text all parsed, all vectorized, all stored in OpenSearch, our orchestration agent actually goes in, starts executing the document analysis, which includes going through each of the nodes, querying information from OpenSearch, then using the LLMs through Bedrock, for example, to generate the required insights and answers. And the output of that at the end is a structured output of the document that we can then store in Amazon RDS, for example, for persistence. So overall, a very strong and powerful solution, very flexible. And there's different ways you can approach this, but that's proven to be very effective for us. Now, to think about what we've implemented, what I'm happy to do here is share a bit of my experience and my team's experience, and provide some recommendations if you're looking for it. And one note I would say is that as you start that journey, if you've not worked on this before, you might get some quick wins initially. That's very satisfying. It's very exciting. But then as you go deeper into your problem, you might realize that it is harder than you believed, or that you expected, right? And in major cases, it actually will be much harder than you believe. My advice there would be don't give up, right? And a good way to solve those problems and get to the solution that you're looking for is to focus on the pillars that we've talked about. You want to use the right tech stack, and you do want to follow a rigorous experimental approach. This is not standard for traditional R&D necessarily, like software engineering, but if you take some of the experimental process that you will see more in the research aspect of AI, for example, you'll be able to get some really exciting results. So that sound and machine learning practice is definitely your best friend. You want to look at labeled data set, right? So make sure that you can validate your results and get some performance metrics, whether it's accuracy or other metrics. And you want to iterate on that solution to get the best result possible. So iterative fine-tuning is also very important. Again, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your time, and looking forward to any questions.